Hi, it's Kim Muench, Real Life Parent Guide, and I recently read a book on parenting that I just feel so compelled to share with you. It's called The Collapse of Parenting by Dr. Leonard Sax. It is a fantastic resource and a fantastic look at parenting over the last couple of decades and kind of where we are now as opposed to when we grew up. I am 50 years old and I know, and you would probably agree, that parenting today is way different than when we grew up. So Dr. Sax is a physician psychologist and has studied, and he's in Philadelphia, but he's studied parenting in the US and in the UK and Scotland and Ireland and several other countries, and really come to look at what are the challenges that is facing parenting today. And quite frankly, I found a lot of what he has to say in his book very affirming. When you look at, I guess the question is, do you feel like we're doing a good job as parents today? And I'm going to talk specifically to parents of middle school and high school age kids because that's who I tend to connect with most. I would say we're not doing a good job. I think we're dropping the ball. And I think it's very easy to say that the problem is social media. The problem is that our kids have too much time behind screens. While that is a contributing factor, that is not the problem. One of the things that Dr. Sax says in the beginning, and I just want to read this to you, is he says, here's what's weird. We parents are spending more and more time and money on parenting, but when you look at the results, things are getting worse, not better. American kids now are much more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD or bipolar disorder or other psychiatric disorders than they were 25 years ago. They are heavier and less fit than they were 25 years ago. Long-term outcome studies suggest that American kids are now less resilient and more fragile than they used to be. I imagine that you, like me, can probably point to specific examples of all three of these things. And he does go in depth with each of those topics in his book. So he spends, the first part of the book is defining the problems. One of which is during the 80s, our public schools went from, because we were nervous about Japanese and how well their kids were doing, we shifted from looking at, even just for example, kindergarten becoming more of an academic curriculum than a socialization and playful curriculum. I know we can probably all cite examples of how our school has pulled back in terms of arts and things that are not core curriculum to strengthen that, because again, the fear was that our kids weren't measuring up academically. But what's happened in the last 2 decades is that kids have not had the same socialization ability at school, which is, let's be honest, whether it's public or private school, it's where they spend a great portion of their day. So with moving to a more academic approach to things, we've lost out on the basic things in life, like spending time learning how to take turns and to share and to connect well with our fellow students. It's become more about teaching to the test and the academic grading and making sure we're measuring up and our kids are measuring up. And we as parents, because of the messages we're getting in our culture, have become really focused on that. And as a result, we now have kids that maybe do fantastic academically. Some of them don't, but maybe they're academically driven, but socially they're unable to connect with one another in an effective manner. And we've kind of, when our schools shifted into a place of being more academically focused, we lost that socialization part of it. Not completely, but it pulled back. And so it was on the part of the parent to have to pick up the slack there. And some parents, of course, maybe didn't have the childhood that gave them the skills to teach their children those things like sharing and getting along with others. I'm simplifying it here just because I could probably talk all day in this, but I really just want to make the point of that was one of the things that shifted during the 80s that has an impact on our kids today. And to be brutally honest, I know in the community that I live in that there is a lot of pressure on parents and kids to make choices academically that sometimes don't allow for kids to just be bored and like have some time to themselves. Again, also, I think in the community that I live in, the sports are such a big deal and the band is such a big deal, and those pieces take so much of our kids' time. When I read the part about extracurriculars and really looking at what does it mean to your family for your kids to be in extracurriculars, one of the things was look at how little time we have together at the dinner table. I know, for example, there are families that probably only get to have dinner together, if they're lucky, once a week. And hey, once is better than none. But what Dr. Sax is saying in his book is that it's super important. There's a measurable difference statistically between having dinner together as a family 1 day a week and 2 days a week and 3 days a week and 4 days a week. Increasingly, our kids connecting with us without electronics around the table, where we're talking about the daily events, where we're sharing our own daily struggles, where we're really connecting and building relationships with our kids, is super important. And every night that your kid's involved in something is taking away from that family dynamic time. I want you to think about that. And I really feel like, at least where I live, like if you're in a sport or in band, you got to be all in, and you've got to, it literally means months of not spending very much time together and kids getting very little sleep and trying to keep up academically. We can't wonder why there are challenges in our kids, our teens especially, because of the family dynamics and the culture that we're creating by being so freaking busy all the time. So the first part of this is really pointing out the problems, and you kind of, it's a little bit of a downer. It's a little bit, have to say, kind of like, oh wow, I found it very affirming. But then the second part of this is really some solid solutions on how you change these things, and it really comes down to us as parents making a decision about what our values are, defining them and living them out, and not caring so much what everyone around us is doing. I mean, you just have to, actually there's one of the modules in the course that I teach is called Standing on Your Own Parenting Island. While it's important to have community in parenting and working together, and I think that has kind of fallen apart as well, to be honest. I think we're all just trying so hard to get our kids to where they need to be and maybe get ourselves to work and get some kind of dinner on the table and blah, 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 that we're really, really missing the mark. We've got to, in some respects, I think, go back to old school ways and really making our families a priority. One of the things, I just want to share that one of the things that we do, and I think I've talked about this before, but every Sunday evening, I mean, we have crazy busy schedules. Tom has started a business, and I'm working on developing a business and also working at Cook Children's part-time. So our home is very busy. There's a lot going on, and we only have 2 kids left at home. I mean, I can't imagine doing this with 5 kids at home. I don't think it would happen. But the reality is, with 2 teenagers and both of our having very busy schedules, the one thing that we do every week is go out to dinner on Sunday. The reason we do that is because it takes longer to go out to dinner than it does to sit at the table. Nobody brings their electronics and looks at them. I still use an old school calendar and write everything down. So I bring the calendar and we talk about our week. We talk about what's going to happen. We talk about what dinner's going to look like. We talk about who's going to drive who where. And we just spend that time. Also, the other thing we do is say, hey, does anyone have anything they want to bring up from the previous week? Anything, whether it's with someone in the family, maybe an issue, or something that happened at school or whatever, that it gives us the time to connect. So I want to encourage you to do that. And maybe Sunday night doesn't work for you. Maybe it's Saturday morning walk for donuts. I don't know. I don't know what it looks like for your family. The point is that we've got to start deciding as parents what's truly important to us and then living that out despite what everyone else is saying, what everyone else is doing. So I understand that sounds easier said than done. But if we're going to change the culture of our kids going to their friends for advice and information and turning to us instead for our wisdom, we've got to stop lecturing and giving consequences and start building relationships with our children. So anyway, Dr. Leonard Sax, The Collapse of Parenting. Sorry, didn't mean to give you the finger there. Collapse of Parenting. It's a fantastic book. If you've read it, I'd love for you to make a comment below. And anyway, I strongly encourage you to read it. Thanks.